Hello, I'm Orestria, a goth girl in Japan, and these are my seasonal impressions for the winter anime season 2024. What a season, too! I've always been a fantasy girly, and we have buckets of great fantasy shows this season. Okay, like half of them are from last season, but they're still good, so who even cares?
And we start, as always, with the nope category. Shows I think are not worth your time.
Snack basue. Do you know what a snack bar is? Is that really a question that needs to be asked? Do you feel your audience needs this concept explained? Well, this show will. In fact, it will spend 30 seconds explaining it to you over still frames. I think this anime is going for the kind of awkward silence, cringe type of humor. I fundamentally do not get this kind of humor, so I don't know if they're doing it well. But I definitely felt awkward and uncomfortable watching it. I did not like the animation or the designs. This has all the charm of going to a Western-style karaoke bar where nobody knows each other. You don't have any friends there. Nobody's good at singing. Partially because this show includes actually watching people sing karaoke. To me, the funniest part of the whole show was them just straight up playing karaoke screen footage. If you haven't seen Asian-style karaoke screen footage, oh, I have the perfect clip for you. Sokushi cheat ga saikyo sugite isekai no tasura ga marude aite ni naranai desu ka? I think it's actually impossible for me to script this and have as much effect as showing it to you. So welcome to a special mini edition of Orestria. Good. We love a small child walking through a hallway of corpses. Nothing concerning here. Giggle. Smile. Aw, you little murderer. No reactions. The censorship. The censorship blurs. Still just no reaction from him whatsoever. Oh, well, we have to act now. That's it. I didn't remember the dragon, like, dodging the bus even after he kills it. Calm down first. She is remarkably calm. My attack power is this number, which sounds really large, but you have absolutely no context for it. The way they would have been already screaming before she said shut up. If you want something horrific to be effective, you don't just show something horrific. It's more horrific if you show someone reacting to it. If you see something horrific and all the characters are like, yeah, then it lessens the tension. It lessens the horror. It turns it into a joke or a parody. I'll explain my ability. You already did! He died because I said died. That is an explanation of the ability. How much more explanation is actually necessary for that? Oh, God. I agree. There are no good men in this world. There are possibly no good people in this world. And I don't even hate that as a concept. But it's colored like it's a shiny, happy show. What are the stakes? He can instantly kill anybody. Doesn't feel any compunctions about doing so. Can feel negative intent towards him, so he knows if they're trying to kill him. He's only keeping her alive because of her boobs, which is somehow slightly better than the other characters' opinions towards her. It sounds like it's being made up by a 12-year-old as they go along. Sasaki to Pii-chan. We meet a businessman with a ho-hum job. He's a nice enough sort of guy, works hard, and gets along well with his coworkers. To brighten up his life, he heads to the pet store. But being the practical sort, he gets a bird instead of a cat or a dog. And that's where things go off the rails. The bird he adopted is a sage with magical powers from another world, who makes a contract with the businessman.
I want you to make contracts with me and become magical girls!
Which grants him magical powers, including teleporting to the other world. The show, by the way, doesn't really show the guy's reaction. We cut to him at work the next day like nothing fucking happened. 'Cause here's the thing you have to realize. This episode is a barrage of things that happen, but the way they happen is blasé. No style, no emotionality, no fanfare. It ends up all feeling rushed and somehow boring at the same time because there's nothing to latch on to. Also, there's a high school girl that lives next door who's usually standing outside her apartment door, implying she's neglected or worse, and I swear the show is implying she's into him. She's featured pretty firmly on the hot mess of a poster, too. Oraka na tenshi wa akuma to odoru. We follow our main character, a demon trying to pass as human. Because in hell, angels and demons are fighting, and he's supposed to find some kind of leader in the human world to motivate the demons. If your question is, so why is he spending his time in high school? The answer is, yes, that's a very good question that the show has no interest in answering. He falls for the pretty blonde class idol, and ends up revealing his demon self in order to save her from Truck-kun. Shame, really. She could have been brought into a better show. Since all the guys in class are smitten with her, our demon thinks she could help motivate demonkind, so he offers her to come with him. At which point she kicks his ass because she's a literal angel. Which brings us back to the previous question. Why is she fucking around in high school if her job is to kill demons? And then when she defeats him and enslaves him, it seems weirdly sexual. I investigated this, which brought me to a rabbit hole. I went to Mal and found a thread from manga readers who were mad at the adaptation, so nothing new there. In this case, it was because the manga was more erotic. Not in the sense of there being sex, but the scene that I already felt uncomfortable in was supposed to be full of hentai faces and moaning. Which still wouldn't be funny to me, but I feel like it's worth pointing out that even if you like the idea of this show, you should just read the manga because the core concept was censored out. Pon no Michi, a cute girls doing cute things show about mahjong, with chintzy music, lackluster animation, character designs that don't understand how breasts work, and a talking mascot character who can only be heard by the main character. The main girl gets told she can't hang out at her house because she's too loud. She then finds out that her dad used to run a mahjong parlor, which he still owns, and he's put out the key so she can hang out there with her friends. Somehow, despite having a dad who owns a mahjong parlor, she doesn't know enough about mahjong to recognize the table. Not just not knowing the rules, she can't recognize it from the pieces. This logic changed. What? And you're thinking, okay, she doesn't know mahjong as an excuse to teach the audience the rules by teaching her. But that's not what they're doing. They have her read a rulebook and memorize it and be able to play right away. So her not knowing was a plot cul-de-sac. Anyways, when they get to the mahjong, God help you if you don't know the rules, because they're making jokes about how they're doing it wrong, but I don't know that without being told. They're also making a lot of kaiji references, which in one sense I liked because they weren't scared to show their girls in a less than flawlessly cute way. But I don't really know kaiji well enough to know if these jokes are actually funny. What I do know is that I had the dialogue sped up the whole episode and it sounded natural at increased speed. Kekkon Yubi wa Monogatari. The main guy saw the main girl come to his world as a youth. They became close childhood friends. He's about to confess to her when she tells him she's going back to her world.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
He decides to follow her, and she marries him instead of the guy she was engaged to. By marrying her, he becomes the warrior of light, blah, blah, blah. My first note about this show was, yes, I noticed her tits before you zoomed in on them, thanks. The ED is solely all the female characters in sexy lingerie posing. I have no need of this shit. It seems fine in terms of quality, though. Gekkan Moso Kagaku. We start with a man I will call Green Main Guy. He's constantly bumping into people and knocking things over, which the anime seems to think represents bad luck and not clumsiness. He has an amazing scientific discovery about not Atlantis, but the research lab he works at suddenly gets cold feet about publishing it. Which brings him to Purple Main Guy's workplace, a sketchy science magazine. Purple freaks out because he can see some kind of bad spirit clinging onto Green. What follows is shenanigans that feel very Scooby-Doo, and they're being chased around by a flock of guys in black suits and hats. I was left feeling on the fence until I realized the only femme character was their boss, who was in one scene, over the phone, and her hair is literally shaped like a flower. You better be a much more interesting show if I'm going to watch you when you're this disinterested in women. Ishida. Someone decided to build a city around a dungeon. This was a bad choice. Our main character, at least for this episode, is a girl going to school in the city, and we see its destruction through her eyes. Cool! I love when we start in medias res and then immediately go back. Especially because now that I know there's a disaster coming, I know not to get attached to any of these girls. Meaning that the most shocking moment of the episode made me feel nothing. Then the probable actual main character, a Japanese guy who's been isekai'd, shows up and just wrecks every enemy we've seen so far with no effort. And since he didn't show up until the city was already destroyed, what are the stakes? He's fighting for fun and he's not being challenged. I don't really have any specific complaints about the show. Everything I saw was fine, but it was not effective at gaining my interest. Mato Seihei no Slave. In this anime, doors to another grim world have started opening. If it opens where you are, you'll be sucked in, and the monsters there will kill you. Thankfully, in this world, there are also people with powers. Those of whom have useful combat powers get recruited into the government defense forces and stay in dorms on the other side to rescue people. Oh, did I forget to mention that only women get powers? This has led to a swap in gender relationships, where it's a matriarchal society. Women are the army, business and world leaders, and men do the domestic stuff. Watch my interest be piqued, and then fade away. Our main guy, of course, gets doored and rescued by the battle girls. The main girl tries her power to enslave someone and in exchange improve their combat abilities on him, apparently the first time she's thought to try it out on a person. And it's super effective. I'm never excited to see slave in a show's title, but her ability is temporary. She asked his permission to do it, and part of the deal is that in exchange she has to give something to the slave. With the monsters, she just had to give them pork chops or whatever. But with him, she has to sloppy make out with him. Yeah, this show has an ecchi tag. He ends up being the caretaker to their all-female dorm so that they can make use of him even when they're not using him in slave mode in battle. Then the second episode was basically just love Hina, but the girls have superpowers, and I can't. I get that there's a market for this, I'm just not it. Majo to Yaju. In this show, our main characters, Guido and Ashaf, are part of an organization of magic users who police magic users. Guido is mostly in this to hunt down witches because they were cursed by a witch, and the way to break that curse is to get the witch to undo it. A lot of stuff happens in this show. I'd be remiss not to mention the giant shark monster, or a bunch of women getting mutilated to be used in a spell. I had a hard time connecting with the characters. The show did explain why everyone thought the way they did. I just personally came out of it hating everyone. And spoilers for the first episode, but Guido isn't a girl. He's a big monster bro cursed to be stuck in a woman's body. And witches are, as best as I can tell from what I've seen, entirely women. So this is an anime about two guys traveling around fighting women. And why on earth is this 2 seasons in a row I have to deal with witch-themed edgelord shows? Saikyo Tank no Meikyu Koryaku Tairyoku 9999のレアスキル持ちtank 勇者パーティーを追放される. Our main character, Rude, is a strong tank, but ends up getting kicked out of the hero's party. He takes this in stride, pretty happy to have an excuse to go home and visit his ill sister. He temporarily joins a party of lower-level adventurers that are heading in the same direction. Rude ends up totally saving their butts as a way harder than expected monster comes their way. The monster chasing after a pretty little girl. It turns out she's a homunculi. They're mostly used as slave labor, although she's a combat model. He brings her along with him despite there being general prejudice against homunculi. I mean, you've probably noticed by now that it's kind of generic looking and the animation is pedestrian. I did like that the show had a lot more femme characters than I can expect of a generic fantasy isekai show. The hero's party was all girls.
Yes, let's stick with the ladies.
Still, there's just not much going on here. Isekai de mofu mofu nare nare suru tame ni ganbatte imasu. Our main character is another victim of karoshi, being worked to death. God sends her to another world to decide if the humanity of that world is worth saving because of their attitudes towards beast folk and other magical creatures. They don't look like people who'd persecute others, she says, looking at a crowd of white people. God asks her what powers she would want, and what she wants is to be able to enjoy fluffy cute animals, so she gets a power where all animals love her. I initially thought this would be a nice dinner show for me, but we've fallen into the trap of being unwilling to take a side. Are you a fluffy healing show about a cute girl who loves animals? Or a plot show about an evil church and racism? This anime feels really, really inconsistent about the plot, and also the main character. She's the reincarnation of a grown woman, but she mostly acts like a 4-year-old, except when she doesn't. Like, there's a scene where she asks someone how to use money. A woman who was worked to death. How to use money.
Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
So you're thinking, she just doesn't have that many memories of her past life. But then there's also scenes where she's like, I learned how to fake obedience with a smile in my previous life. It was always pretty mid, but episode 4 pissed me off, being basically an episode about child abuse. What is your show about? Dosanko ga wa nama ramen koi. Another romance anime where the focus is solely on how lovely the girl is. Yay. This time the girl is a gyaru living in Hokkaido. And you know what? I like the girl just fine. We don't get many shows set in Hokkaido. I enjoyed the setting and I desperately miss snow. So it was lovely seeing a snowscape. Too bad the guy is nothing. Actually, he's worse than nothing. He's so stupid it ruined any engagement I had. This guy is moving to Hokkaido, where he's never been before in his life, and he decides he's close enough and gets out of the taxi, ignoring the taxi driver who's like, bro, are you sure? His phone is low on battery, it's the coldest weather he's ever experienced in his life, and he actually got out a 3-hour walk away from his destination. Which, like, your taxi driver knew that guy. He encounters the main girl who advises him to get on the bus with her as it will take him to his destination. He's so smitten with her that he doesn't get on the bus. And she doesn't remind him either. Hime-sama gomon no jikan desu. The titular princess is an amazing swordswoman and leads a battalion of soldiers into battle. Not sure why. They suck and she can one-hit kill the monster, but sure. We cut straight to her imprisoned. The demons then reveal that they're going to torture her until she gives up state secrets. The torture method? Delectable food. I could nitpick the fact that she's imprisoned with her magic sword, but the show knows it's being silly. That's why they yada-yada'd over how she got captured by the demon army in the first place. That's why even though she's confessing multiple times an episode, it's never info the Demon King thinks they can use. The premise is intentionally silly, they don't care, and it's just an excuse to make their jokes. I think it's doing what it wants to do, and it's doing it well. Comedy is subjective, so if it sounds or looks fun for you, go ahead and give it a shot. For me, the jokes got old a bit fast, and the second episode added some overly sexualized femme characters, so I'm out. Akuyaku Reijo level 99. Watashi wa ure boss desu ga mao de wa arimasen. I'll get the obvious out of the way. This show's not much of a looker. We're in a classic otome game situation. A heroine commoner with the rare healing magic goes to an academy full of nobles. She collects some stock romanceable characters before eventually defeating the Demon King. There's also a villainess who turns out to be the secret ultimate boss. She's also the main character. And I respect that they put some effort into storytelling. doing a tidy rug pull in the first episode. However, the show generally feels really inconsistent with the pacing. We speed run the I died and got reincarnated into the villain bit, which is for the best. But other things still feel so slow. We watch her in detail training to raise her level, accidentally to the point of being the highest ever so that everyone assumes she's lying. My main issue is the main character, with the accidentally goofy name of Yumiella Dolkness, crosses the line between being cool and logical to being fully apathetic. And if you mix weak animation, slow pacing, and a main character who can't be bothered, it makes me not care as well. Meiji Gekken 1874. Here we have a historical fiction anime with some fantasy elements. We're following a few different factions, the government, anti-government, mobsters and criminals, and our main character, an ex-samurai who is going to face mistrust because he was part of a group opposed to the current government and killed many soldiers in the failed defense of Aizu Castle. Because I'm not super familiar with the history, it felt like there was a bit of a wall between me and the show. Like, it was expecting me to know things, and fair enough, because it's a Japanese show about a Japanese historical period, but I don't know. So to some extent, I don't feel super qualified to judge this. Also, as happens a lot with historical fiction, it's very dude-heavy, although I see you, show. I see you making efforts to have interesting women in the mix. I think the quality is fine, so if you're into this stuff, I guess it's worth checking out, as far as I know. Ninja Kamui. Some ninjas are going around murdering ex-ninjas who were hiding as normal people after giving up ninjaing. We follow one such potential murder victim, as he pretends to be a normal person with his wife and son. I don't even need to tell you what happens next. We spend half the episode getting to know and like his family so that we can fridge them and then watch him go on a murder spree. Tale as old as time. There's one reason to watch this show. It's not the plot. It's not the main character. It's the fights. If you want to watch some absolute badass showcase animation fight scenes and don't care about the weak sinew holding it all together, then have fun. I'd rather watch John Wick. Momochi-sanshi no Ayakashi Oji. Our main character is a plucky orphan girl who finds herself surrounded by fabulous fantasy boys. Himari grew up in an orphanage, and once she's 16, she gets a present from her deceased parents. The familial house. It's out in the country, but she hopes she can get in touch with her roots there. She finds it full of men. Turns out her familiar house sits on the border between the human world and the world of the Ayakashi, and thus it needs caretakers. There's the fiery Ise, the cool-headed Yukari, and the shy Aoi who, when push comes to shove, can channel the powers of an Ayakashi to become the foxy Nue. I went into this really excited because it was giving me old school shoujo fruit basket vibes. On paper, this is right up my alley, so I watched a fair chunk. Almost certainly too much. It's bland and tropey. Red hair, fire powers, impulsive personality, check. Blue-haired, cool, water powers, check. Are you serious? The character designs look okay in the abstract, but frequently seem odd or even off-model in movement. They have a tendency to over-explain everything, and I spend a lot of time just waiting for characters to freaking talk to each other. The biggest condemnation I have is that I never cared about watching the next episode. Metallic Rouge. We're in a sci-fi, cyberpunk-adjacent world where humanity exists on multiple planets, thanks, of course, to slave labor. There's a type of beings called Neans. As of 3 episodes in, I cannot tell you exactly what they are, but they require injections to not die, and they follow the Asimov code. The injection part gets even worse because the same substance they need to live is a fun drug for humans. And since basically everybody in the entire anime is a giant racist asshole, they will steal it and let a Neon fucking die just to get high. And when a Neon dies, they get put into the trash. Our protagonists are the oddly childish Rouge, who is maybe a Neon, but a special one without the Asimov code or the skin markings. She's working for some kind of organization with her handler, who is not just smart, but a smart aleck. Their goal is to take out the Immortal Nine by transforming into red Sentai battle armor. Episode 1 felt like intriguing cyberpunk. Episode 2 turned into something out of the first half of Trigun, just like an adventurous romp involving a bunch of new side characters. The 3rd episode was written by someone taking Philosophy 101. Just everyone bluntly talking about freedom versus being a tool. As I kept watching, it just felt like everything was being fueled by a steady string of coincidences. And then the blunt efforts to have a theme turned me right off. I'm really disappointed. I really wanted to fucking love this. Sengoku Yoko. A wandering swordsman is about to challenge some bandits when he stumbles upon a pair of supernatural beings, a human sage and a Yoko, targeting the same bandits. The duo tells the men, "Being bandits is bad, okay?" When this obviously doesn't work and a fight breaks out, we find out that the sage can borrow the Yoko's powers and kick serious ass. This anime looks great. Art design, animation, it's lovely. No high school, no isekai or game logic, good gender balance of the main crew, fantasy action. It's practically a checklist of traits an anime can have to get my attention. But after each of the 2 episodes I watched, I was left wondering, why do I feel so ambivalent? I think it comes down to the characters. The swordsman, who I think is being set up as the main character, is so annoying. He'll be determined, then scared, then whiny. Whatever makes the plot advance. He irritated me nearly constantly. The Sage and Yoko duo, I wouldn't say I disliked them, but I'm on the side about them. I think I'm supposed to be intrigued by the human who hates humans and the non-human who wants to save humans and them working together, but bitch, I'm a human who hates humans. Humans fucking suck. I think this has a lot of potential. It just didn't manage to capture my interest. Kyujitsu no Warumono-san. A while back, there was a show about aliens who decided not to destroy Earth because cats are cute. This show is similar in some ways. We're following an alien organization who are working to kill all humans. Our main character is their commander. And this group is evil, but they're not like capitalist levels of evil, so they get proper days off and don't have to work overtime. And on his days off, our evil commander likes to go to the zoo to enjoy the pandas. He's got such a thing for cute stuff, he can't bear to eat panda-shaped cookies because they're too cute. This show is definitely better than the cat one. The animation is nicer, it has a wider variety of jokes. I really liked the scenes where our villain encounters the red hero. It's just kind of slow. I think I'd recommend the manga for this over the anime since you can control the pace more. Also, you know I'm not going to let this slide. There's like one girl and she's a store clerk. Okay, maybe this child is a girl too. I'm genuinely unsure. Oredake level up na ken. We exist in an alternate timeline where in the recent past, gates started opening up. Modern weaponry can't hurt the monsters within, but some people awaken as hunters, with different skills and rank levels. They clear the dungeons before the dungeon breaches and unleashes the monsters into the world, and take valuable resources which have altered the technology and resource use of the world. Generally speaking, your rank is your rank, and there's nothing you can do to improve it. The title translates to only I can level up, so no prizes for guessing what lies in the future for our main character. He's not only the lowest rank, but infamous as the weakest hunter. At least as we meet him. I loved the first arc of this show. Our guy is weak but tenacious, and he uses his intellect and observational skills to survive against all odds. There was so much tension, thanks to fuck you level cliffhangers that the show liked to pump out. I was desperately awaiting the next episode every time. We even had a lot of femme characters in the ill-fated dungeon party. And then everything I liked about the show completely fell apart. Femme characters? Few and far between and stuck in feminized roles. Big sister, mother, healer. The tension disappears as the guy gets the expected overpower treatment, complete with full chatification to the point he's taller and his face shape has changed. Somehow people all recognize him, even though I literally thought he was 2 different characters when I saw the anime poster. He also has a video game interface over real life now, complete with loot drops and interdimensional storage space. To make matters worse, he starts consistently making what I consider to be pretty dumb choices, which was really hard to reconcile with the clever guy that he was in the first arc. I definitely think the first arc is worth watching. I would say from there, swap over to the webtoon if you're really interested. The anime really likes wasting time in order to set up cliffhangers, so the pacing is probably better there. Buchigiri! Our main character is starting a new school. One that has Arabic architecture despite all the Japanese school punk trappings. It's bright, colorful, a unique setting, even if I don't get why it's here. Our main character seems like a normal dweeby guy and is instantly intimidated by the high school punks all around, who have interesting and varied designs. There are 2 main gangs that run the school. His estranged best friend is in one gang. They used to be very close, and the main character used to be the strong one, but they had some kind of falling out. And then the cute girl in class is the little sister of the other gang's leader. He spurns his ex-friend to go after the sole cute, normal-looking girl in class, because as we will hear multiple times, his dream is to lose his virginity. She seems into him at first, but it's literally just to trap him so she can watch her brother beat him up, because she is into her brother and likes to watch him fight over her. She's one of 2 femme characters in this show. The other being the main character's mom, who's way too invested in his dating life. Like in a creepy way. Pros. This show looks amazing. The punk designs are really fun. The whole thing is colorful and energetic. Cons. The target audience is like 10-year-old boys. Girls only exist in relation to guys. There's a bunch of butt and poop humor. A 10-inch character is above average in this cast. Admittedly, them being meatheads is meant to be part of the appeal, but it was grating. Kekai Elise. We have an Ijinsei show with a hint of isekai. Our main character's first life, she's a stuck-up noble, like the standard villainess from the Otome game shows. Due to the war and strife in her country, her engagement to the prince she loves doesn't work out, and she dies. When we meet her, she's been isekai'd to modern Japan, and as penance for her horrible behavior in her first life, she became a doctor. Not just any doctor, a god doctor who never loses a patient and is perfect at everything. But that's not all. When she dies again in Japan, after a scene that honestly still sticks with me, she finds herself back in her younger self in the other world, but before everything had gone to shit. Everyone around her definitely thinks she's had a personality transplant because she's no longer a giant bitch. She no longer considers marrying the prince to be her life goal. In fact, she risks everything to pursue medicine once again. Sometimes 2 movies or 2 anime with intensely similar plots just happen to come out at the same time. And when that happens, you can't help but compare them. And there are 2 shows this season about an Ijinsei doctor, and this is the worst of the 2. Pacing and animation are weak, the plot's pretty repetitive. Elise is constantly finding herself surrounded by medical situations that only she can diagnose or only she can perform the surgery. Like, you don't want to be her friend because you're gonna be ill. I especially love the development of the relationship between Elise and her rival from her former life. That's code for I ship them. I certainly don't ship her and the prince because they have 0 romantic chemistry. Like, to the point where it's actually funny. Ragna Crimson. Ragna, probably the most powerful human alive, thanks to his future self, shipping all his hard-earned powers back in time to his past body. And Crimson, who has whatever powers they feel like at the moment, antagonistically work together to destroy all dragons. Powerful dragons, just for the record, look like humans most of the time. See, this is why I like reviewing shows after they're over, or after I've dropped them. And yes, I dropped this. Ouch. It just wasn't able to hold on to the edgy without being too much thing. Instead, it started trying to be earnestly tragic. But it was so inept at doing so that the result was just people spewing their backstory at you just in time to die horribly. Like, it's so easy to make me cry. Freepik made me cry over a piece of wood. So to have nearly all the main characters of a season die and me be like, can we get this over with? Is terrible. I really enjoyed the first half of this anime. And then we got to a point where each arc was worse than the one before. Not much aided in the anime focusing too much on Ragna, who, I'm sorry, has the personality of a cardboard box. And the sidelining of Crimson, who I adore. I'll miss you, Crimson. Nozumanu Fushi no Bokensha. A low-ranked adventurer named Rent stumbles upon an unmarked passage in what's meant to be a dungeon safe enough for low rankers and gets wasted by a dragon. But then he wakes up as a skeleton, and somehow he's retained his human consciousness. This show low-key started out kind of bad, like 30 seconds of walking through empty CG dungeon hallways. But it grew on me. We're in a fantasy world where adventurers go to dungeons, but there are no item boxes or levels or skills people are born with, and our main character is not some teen. He's been an adventurer for a long time, really built a name for himself in town as someone reliable, although it seemed he'd never be strong enough to achieve his dream of being a mithril class adventurer. Until he became undead, at least. It's kind of mid, but I enjoyed my experience. I don't really know who the show is for, though. And especially this season, we have much better fantasy anime out there. Jakukara Tomozaki-kun, 2nd season. Okay, yeah, I know. It's a high school show about romance. But it's season 2, and we don't even really know who Tomozaki's romantic interest is meant to be. That's part of the plot of this season. This is more of a light comedy drama. The main character was a nerdy loser who, through gamifying real life, has made a lot of self-improvements and is continuing to challenge himself. I enjoy Tomozaki improving himself, and this season we can see that his change has inspired other people around him to improve themselves. That said, I dropped this because the specific arcs that were happening were not appealing to me. The first arc was intentionally uncomfortable as it was about bullying, and the second one involved characters communicating vaguely through references to a fictional story that only exists in the show's world, which just made my eyes glaze over. 30歳まで童貞だった魔法使いになれるらしい. In the world of this anime, if you make it to 30 while still being a virgin, you gain telepathy when touching someone. I'm living proof that that's not true in real life, so don't get your hopes up, youngins. For some reason that is beyond me, the show refers to this ability as magic. With his new power, our main character discovers that the most handsome, charming guy at work likes him, which is bewildering because he's a loser and doesn't think anyone's ever liked him before. This is a boys' love show, which historically have been kind of rare to show up in the TV anime lineup. I'm a Fujoji. I love BL. But I also hate BL because the most common tropes in this genre are terrible. Thankfully, this show avoids them. In fact, thanks to the telepathy, it also avoids the common romance anime problem where every problem could be solved by people just talking, because the main character can just touch the other guy to find out what he's thinking. The animation and pacing are quite basic. The B couple, BL stories have B couples more so than B plots, are pretty uninteresting. It's probably not worth watching if you're not into BL. But for a TV BL anime? Chiyu Maho no Machigatta Tsukaikata Sensho o Kakeru Kaifuku Yoin. 3 Japanese high schoolers get isekai'd in a giant beam as they are summoned to be heroes in another world. Well, the 2 student council members were summoned to be heroes. Usato was just kind of accidentally included. But it turns out he has a rare magic type, healing. Enter Rose. Now usually I get annoyed when the girl in the show is the healer, because it's this delicate caring role being designated to the girl. Rose is a healer, but she is not dainty. Rose is tall, muscular, gruff, and will kick your ass. She runs her entire crew with Spartan training and teaches Usato to gain superhuman musculature and endurance by training beyond human capacity by constantly healing himself to keep going. This show isn't anything revolutionary. They spend way too much time training. But there's real quality here. The animation looks nice, the characters are varied and interesting, and the jokes land.
Just be porn. Yeah, I get it. It sucks that porn gets no budget and shit animation.
Wait, what? Now? We're in the middle of the fine section. The Just Be Porn section comes before the Nope section. Mahou shoujo ni akogarete. Yep. I liked the fetish ecchi magical girl show. I mean, I definitely have issues with it. There are topics I wanted it to go into more than it did, and I definitely watched the censored version. But yes, I have to say that I liked it. Our main character, Utena, God, that naming can't be an accident. Utena is a shy, dorky girl who loves magical girls. Her room is full of magical girl merch, especially showing a preference for the 3 real magical girls who protect her city from the evil organization. But then the evil mascot character recruits her to be part of the evil organization. With blackmail. She doesn't want to hurt her beloved magical girls until she accidentally discovers that BDSM is kinda her thing. I would have liked more of a focus on discovering she likes girls and kink, because we don't get many coming of age and coming into sexuality stories about women, especially queer women. And while the show is obviously male gaze as fuck, I also like that the panty shots and ecchi were constrained to the scenes where it's happening. It's diegetic. The camera's not swerving out of nowhere just to show you some panties. Now sure, the fetishy stuff is very non-consensual, but it's also represented as an evil act being done by a villain. Just, damn it, it's nice having a well-animated queer mess. Saijaku tema wa gomi hiroi no tabi o hajimemashita. We're in a fantasy world where people have skills, and their skills go from 1 to 3 stars. I mean, people can also be good at things they don't have skills for, apparently, but whatever. Our main character is a young girl, Ivy, and during her skill reveal ceremony, it turns out she has the Tamer skill, but with 0 stars. This makes the superstitious populace of her town reject her. Thankfully, the fortune teller in town is not an asshole and teaches her survival skills. Also convenient, this is low-key an isekai. She has her past life in her head to talk to her, giving her advice and making jokes about Japanese culture. We never hear this voice, just Ivy reacting to it. Using these skills, she travels, hoping to find people who will accept her for who she is. That's the crux of this story. Can Ivy find people she can trust, even after all she's been through? After being abandoned by her family? Honestly, virtually everyone she meets is wonderful and kind, leading to a comfy vibe in the show. I basically never felt like Ivy was in danger, which since she's a little girl who's had a horrible life, that's good. I did not want her to be in danger. Loop 7回目の悪役令嬢は元敵国で自由気ままな花嫁生活を満喫する. Our main character, Riche, is a young noblewoman in a world that's about to get rocked by war. But when she dies, she goes back to the moment the prince of her country Otome game troped her. We're joining her on her 7th time through, and just like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, once she realized she was looping, she started using her lives to pick up different skills. She's a scholar, a doctor, a fighter. I get shudders thinking of a worse show making us actually watch every one of those lives. This time around, she runs into Prince Arnaldo. And no, I refuse to call him Arnold. I can't. He's the crown prince of the empire that causes the war that always seems to get her killed. In her life as a soldier, he personally killed her. Her behavior and knowledge, so unlike a usual noble lady, attracts him to her. She's not like other girls. So she develops a new goal for this lifetime. To see if, as Arnaldo's fiancé, she can avert the war once and for all. I'm really into this. Riche has a min-max attitude she's developed towards life that I identify with. And they thread a difficult needle of making Arnaldo interesting despite him being an intentionally cold character.
And finally, the recommended category. If you have limited anime watching time, these are the shows that I think are worth checking out.
Dungeon Meshi. The first episode introduces us to an adventuring party that loses to a red dragon. Not because they weren't strong enough to take it, but because they had fucked up their quest planning and run out of provisions and were basically too hungry to fight. Their healer sacrifices herself to get everyone else out, and the party breaks up over what to do next. Laios, the healer's warrior brother, Marcel, a mage who is very close friends with the healer, and Chilchuk, the sneaky trap finder of the group, decide to take the risk and rush back into the dungeon immediately, despite having no resources. Their plan? Break a taboo and try to survive by eating the monsters in the dungeon. This is going to be a tricky one to talk about. Let me lead you through my journey. Despite how serious the scenario I just described is, you've probably noticed from the visuals that this mostly has a comedic tone. Like, comedy cooking show about dungeon ecology with amazing animation. I was pretty indifferent after the first few episodes. At the start, a lot of the comedy felt like the one woman is shrill and annoying, which grated on me, and I'm not really that into cooking shows in general. But this is a show that keeps evolving. The comedy expands as we get to know the characters better. The amount of thought that's been put into how this dungeon works is endlessly fascinating, and the show gets deeper and darker, not unlike delving deeper into a dungeon. Basically, I got free rent instantly, but it took me a long time to get into this. And beware spoilers, because the internet really has no shame about this one. I do like the show now, but I still feel like I'm not as into it as most people seem to be. Yuki Bakuhatsu Bang Bravern. Another show where it's going to be hard to explain what is so awesome about it because it evolves. Thankfully, it does 2 of those evolutions in the first episode, but that also means just talking about the first episode is kind of spoilery. So, before I get into it, if you want a fun, wild ride of a mecha show full of twists, hype, and comedy that references past greats, go in blind, have fun. For everyone else, in the first episode, we go from realistic joint army exercises in a world where mechs are just normal equipment to a full Independence Day alien invasion, complete with mass destruction and armored flying saucers. But just when things seem really serious and dire, a sentient no-name brand Gundam shows up. He's literally his own fan and has clearly watched too much anime. If you've heard tell of the gay mecha anime this season, this is it. It's here. It's great. Military shows love to be like, it's unrealistic to have girls here, and I'm glad this didn't go in for that. We have a lot of women around, as mechanics, doctors, generals, combatants, alien mech pilots. This show keeps one-upping itself, and I love it for that. This is the kind of show that had me sending deranged Discord messages to friends and family. Is there any greater praise? Shangri-La Frontier. This anime has continued on from last season, so I'm not going to get into a ton of depth. Sanadaku whet his skills playing broken trash games, and because of that, his reflexes and gaming knowledge are almost like a superpower when he plays maybe the best current game, a VR MMORPG named Shangri-La Frontier. Unlike most of these anime, the game feels like a game that could really exist and would be fun. The people play it like it's a game. It's populated with a wide variety of fun people, both PCs and NPCs, and even a low-level fight versus a goblin is animated gorgeously and lovingly. I didn't actually write notes for this season. I was just too busy enjoying myself. Yubisaki to Denen. The anime gods have heard my prayers. Romance. From the woman's point of view. And they start dating. Oh, I've also buried the lead, although you may have already noticed from my footage. Our main character is deaf. And while not actually mute, she lacks confidence in her speaking, and so communicates either with Japanese Sign Language or with smartphones and paper. So, a romance where the characters are interesting and of age, dealing with real-life problems, showing us characters who have different abilities, foreigners being regular people. I felt like I was learning a lot about not only deaf people in Japan, but just Japanese culture in general, from a point of view I've never had before. We also have strong theming about staying in your safe zone versus putting yourself out there, taking risks, and expanding your horizons. I ate this up. I watched every new episode breathlessly. Kusuriya no Hitorikoto. Another great show continuing on from last season. We follow Mao Mao, a servant living in the palaces of the Emperor of China, using her medical knowledge and well-trained mind to deductive reason her way through political intrigue, thefts, and murders. She works with a court eunuch, Jinishi. They have an interesting and fun character dynamic between them. He's used to just flashing his pretty face at people to get his way, and this misses Mao Mao, because she couldn't care less. Nevertheless, they have a growing sense of trust and understanding between them. This show is funny, thoughtful, and even at its most episodic, it's probably still sneakily setting up something for later. And despite how awesome this show is, it was nevertheless overshadowed, for the second season in a row, my number one anime is Sozo no Frieren. Sozo no Frieren is a touching look at the importance of connections. Brief connections, past connections, current connections. How all of these build and change who we are, shape our future. Kindness and warmth, comfy comedy, and fucking badass magic battles. Frieren is an elf mage. After living on her own for an unfathomable amount of time, she's recruited by the hero Himmel to go on the journey with him to kill the Demon King. It's a long, Tolkien-esque journey spanning 10 years, a huge chunk of the human Himmel's life, and a blink of an eye to Frieren. Himmel has passed, and already legends of the great heroes are becoming fuzzy around the edges as generations of humans go by. But Frieren's still here, and she has drastically underestimated the effect that short journey had on her. There was a moment in this season where you could feel everybody holding their breaths. Is this about to be a tournament arc? No, it's not. Don't worry about it. Truly the hardest thing to talk about in a review is things that are just about perfect. It's hard to express how huge this is, and it really has earned its hype. At time of writing, Frieren has surpassed Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood as the top anime on Mal and Annie list. Not for me, at least not yet. Endings are important, and Frieren is continuing on towards end, but I have immense faith in this show and the people adapting it. Somehow. Did you know the director of this? It's like the second TV anime he's directed. And the first one was Bochi the Rock? What? Best boy! It's been hard pickings for best boy recently, I swear. Marito from Buchigiri. I just love pretty boy psychos, okay? And the snake bites. I wish I had snake bites. Not enough to get my lip pierced again, though. That sucks. Also, shout out to this guy. I don't know anything about him, I just like his design a lot. Arnoldo, the prince from Loop 7 Kaime. Admittedly, I love him more because he's an asshole, and he reminds me of King Haggard from Last Unicorn. Like, King Haggard couldn't find joy in anything, that's why he captured the unicorns. Arnoldo seems similarly bored with basically everything in life, and what he likes about Riche is that he can't predict her. Like, it's King Haggard as a young hot guy who's still redeemable. How do you say no to that? Itsuomi from Yubisaki to Renren. I get there are people who don't like him because they think he feels pushy, but what I saw was him asking Yuki for her consent constantly. I think the friction he causes is meant to show that because he's so international and has spent so much time overseas, he's very different than most Japanese people. He's a lot more touchy-feely than everyone else. Maybe it just makes more sense to me as someone living in Japan. However, I'm giving the best boy title to the biggest best boy, Bravern from Bravern. He is his own fanboy. He somehow has his own theme music that he pumps into the cockpit. He has a holographic display coming out of his back to make his poses look more awesome. He made a meeting of generals from countries all over the world, in the middle of a crisis, listen to fan-fiction quality gay innuendo. What a champ. The nominees for Best Girl are Sulfur from Maho Shoujo ni Akogareta. If the show had done more of the emotional investigation into coming of age that I deluded myself it was going to, then Magia Beze would be here. But I'm going to stick with Sulfur. Sulfur is my favorite of the hero girls. She's got a fun gap between her public face and personal face, and who doesn't like a small, delicate-looking girl who really wants an excuse to summon her giant fist weapons and pound your face in? Yuki from Yubisaki to Renren. I don't know how you watch this show without really wanting to root for her. She is genuinely trying to spread her wings and expand her horizons, moving through the world from her own unique point of view. And you can just feel her joy. Rose from Chiyu Maho. Let's be real, she's the real star of this show. She's big, she's strong, she's gruff, she'll kick your ass for your own good. Her backstory arc is the best thing in the whole show, and even though I knew from context basically everything that was going to happen in that backstory, it still made me cry. Oh, and a shout out to the senpai girl. She kind of takes the role of the love interest, but she's just genuinely wacky. Like, I feel like I could go to karaoke with her and have a great time. Longtime viewers know that I love a long-haired psycho, and we get a delightful femme version from Sozo no Frieren. I mean, I love all the girls in Frieren, but they're so stoic, it's hard to bring out my inner squee. But Yubel brings swagger. The swagger of confidence. The confidence that you could kill anybody in the room with you right now if you felt like it, and you wouldn't feel bad afterward. Mao Mao, last season's winner, is still around and still awesome. I still think that she's neurodivergent arrow ace, and I want way more anime characters I can say that about. I also want to give this anime a shout out for having so many sex workers and such positive portrayals of them overall. But I'm giving this season's Best Girl award to Pencil Gone from Shangri-La Frontier. Yeah, she got a nomination last time too, but in this half of the series we get a lot more of her, and I love it. She will sass you to death, possibly after killing you to death, because she's an infamous player killer. Watching her play the game, you can easily imagine how she uses the same cunning attitude to succeed in her in-real-life modeling career. But we also get to see that she does have a softer side as she starts getting into the plot of the game via a connection she feels to one of the NPCs. I especially appreciate how the show makes no effort to suggest that any romance between her and Sanaraku or anyone else. They're all just bros working together out of mutual respect for each other's skills and bickering like siblings. Good.
Now it's time for the trans non-binary highlight.
Masato Yaju. Kido is a burly man cursed to be in a woman's body. I dropped this anime after the first episode, so I have no idea what, if anything, the show does about that with regards to his feelings about being in a girl's body, because the reveal of his original body happened really late in the one episode I watched. Crimson! I still love them, to be clear, but it just felt like they didn't get to do as much in this half of the anime. As I said last time, Crimson was basically the reason I was watching the show, so them getting sidelined really hampered my enjoyment of the show. I want them to be in a different show where I can enjoy them. And that's it! So far the spring season is looking quite varied and sapphic, which we love to see. It honestly feels strange that I'm watching like a manageable number of shows, but I'll give you that breakdown next time. Bye-bye! With his new power, our main character discovers that there's an ambulance.